Wants to thank you guys for coming to this Lunch and Learn. Hopefully, if you have not, we have some materials on the back counter to pick up. We have these little cards, and we have lots of them. So if you want to grab a handful to have, at your desk for students, these might be a good tool for them to just have in their purse, in their pocket, in their wallet for them. So you can grab a handful of those. We have a lot. So thank you for coming to this issue. We know obviously it's a very sensitive issue at the beginning of this year. Our students are dealing with a lot right now. You guys are frontline to our kids, so we just wanted to get some information in your hands. I have a very short video, so I have to say very short, 20 minutes. So, but it is very informative on some of the issues that our students are dealing with, that we see downstairs as far as specific issues, but you see the behaviors in your classrooms every day. So I want to show that. Hopefully it works. I haven't tested it out yet, so
you may be asking yourself why you should learn about the signs and symptoms of various mental disorders that indicate that a student may be suicidal. The answer is because, as a teacher, you have the unique opportunity to observe behavioral changes in your students that others may not notice. The teachers in this film will share their stories of referring students for help. We encourage you to familiarize yourself with your school's policies regarding student referrals. If you notice any of the symptoms outlined in this film in one of your students, speak to him or her as well as to the school counselor. By referring a student for evaluation, you are helping him or her to get the help that he or she needs. You may even save a life.
better.
Much better.
32,000 people in the U.S. die by suicide each year. It's the third leading cause of death for young people 10 to 19 years of age. There are many risk factors for suicide. However, over 90% of young people who die by suicide are suffering from a mental health problem. There are several mental disorders that put young people at risk for suicide, and these are major depression, bipolar disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, drug and alcohol abuse, and conduct disorder. Children who have a family history of mental disorders are at a greater risk for suicide.
Your teacher, she said you've been missing school. And when you do show up, you often seem unprepared. Lana, that's so unlike you. What's going on?
So one of the things that you're looking for if you have concern that a teenager may have major depression, there's a change in what the young person usually did. Those changes can be in various different areas of their life simultaneously. So one area would be how they're doing in school. You may actually see a change in their grades. A child that had been getting A's or B's or C's are now getting a significant grade change on like D's and F's. You may also notice changes in how the teenager is interacting with their peers. So you may notice that they're not sitting with their usual group of friends at lunchtime that they normally would hang out with, or they seem to be isolating themselves more, choosing not to join in with the groups of kids to talk about things or doing after-school activities. The teenager may decide not to participate in a usual sport or an after-school activity that they had usually enjoyed.
There was a student that I had. She was very athletic. You know, she was involved in all the sports that we offered. Basketball player, softball player, wanted to run track. And one day she just said that she wasn't interested in doing that anymore. And I asked her, you know, what's going on? This doesn't sound like you. This is not the girl that I know. You know, this is not my student. And the answer was kind of like, nothing, no, I don't want to talk about it. So what I did was I referred her to the guidance counselor. She started seeing the guidance counselor on a regular basis, and 3 or 4 months after, me saying something to her initially, like I noticed that there's something wrong, she came to me and said, thank you for, saying something. And I asked her, is there anything you want to talk about? She said, no, it's nothing I want to talk about. I have some problems at home, but, thank you. And my response was, I just want you to know that I know you. You're my student, and I've gotten to know you, and I'm concerned. That was a really, really good moment for me.
One of the things that can be confusing is that in school, a young person on the one hand could look more sad, depressed, unhappy, not participating in class. On the other hand, you could have a student who is looking very cranky and irritable and being very difficult and very oppositional. And you might not think that that is depression, but it could be, and it's just something to keep in mind. So there's some physical changes that can occur for a teenager suffering from depression. A teacher may notice a young person who's not eating their lunch. They may come with their lunch every day, and they actually don't even touch it. The other opposite can occur as well. Some young people, when they get depression, start overeating. They actually crave carbohydrates. They eat a lot more candy and junk food. Other types of physical symptoms, the young person may be complaining of feeling tired a lot of the time, having low energy, feeling like they can't pick themselves up and go. They may find it very hard to fall asleep at night, stay asleep, may find themselves waking up really early, or they're tossing and turning through the night, so they're not feeling rested when they get up in the morning. And when they come into school, they may actually have real deep dark circles in their eyes and really look really, exhausted. So another thing to be aware of is to really listen for children who have self-esteem issues. And one way you can notice that is by various comments that the teenager may make about themselves, such as, I'm not worth anything, I can't do anything right, I don't like myself. While you are working with young people and during the school year, they may be working on various projects, whether it's writing poems or doing artwork or writing short stories, to look for themes that seem very dark, sad, talking about life not worth living, a lot of themes about death, dying, people dying around them, feelings of hopelessness or worthlessness that comes through that writing.
I would see poetry or free writing that would say, everybody sucks, I hate everything, why is the world so unfair, why am I treated this way, how can she go out with someone else, how can he treat me this way. Some of the words I would pay attention to would be, I hate, anger. What is very important to track the behavior. What I do is I write down the observable behaviors of a student. If a student is depressed and does not get their work done, just keep a log of that. I write it down, I make a mental note, I just keep track of that, because if that behavior changes, that tells me that that student might have some sign of depression.
Personally, I have a rule of thumb. Anytime that behavior seems contrary to a pattern that you've been watching for longer than 2 to 3 weeks, then you ought to start thinking, you ought to start taking action. But in my case, I had looked at Will almost physically change. He's a tall, lanky kid, and he began to shrink. Everything retreated as though he were underwater, and it became so visible and such a visceral reaction that I thought, there is something wrong with my child.
There are chemicals in the brain that help the different parts of the brain communicate with each other. If the chemicals get out of balance, this communication can break down and lead to depression. Depressed brains show a decrease in serotonin transporter levels in specific areas of the brain. Medication works to reset the brain's chemistry and is generally used for 6 to 12 months.
As much as I know about this illness, it was very hard for me to come to terms with the fact that my son was depressed. He was getting ready for exams, and I found him. He was lying in his room, papers scattered all over the place, and he was in tears. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I just can't do this anymore. And suddenly it hit me that this child was depressed, that my son was depressed. We have family history. I suffer from depression myself. I should be sharper about this. And I said, sweetie, I think I know what is wrong here. I think you are depressed. And I know this. I know this illness. We will get you help. We will make sure that we do something about this. You do not have to feel this way.
So another disorder to be aware of that puts a teenager at heightened risk is bipolar disorder. This is a disorder that has two different, in a sense, mood states. One which is like major depression, where the young person has low energy, inability to get out of bed, get things done, poor concentration, may report being irritable, tired, not being able to do things as they used to. And that mood can shift and change to a period of time, an elevation of their mood. They feel extremely happy, very energized. They have a decreased need of sleep or no need for sleep at all. They actually may feel that their thoughts are racing, they're talking very fast. People around them may feel that they're not actually making sense. They also may change in the way that they dress. They may all of a sudden be dressing more provocatively than what was normal for them. They may actually show very poor decision-making ability. So they may, as an example, take their parents' car and take off with it without telling them, getting a speeding ticket, running red lights, going places where they're not supposed to go. They may engage in risky sexual behavior.
It was my first year teaching, and I was teaching 7th grade. I had several students who had been told, were the rambunctious 6th graders who were coming in, and I was supposed to look out for them. One of those students ended up, I realized, being very, very smart. He had days when he was extremely out of control, laughing at everything, running around the classroom, being, again, what many people would say, a 7th grade boy who was kind of just going through hormonal shifts. And it wasn't until the end of the year when there was an incident at a softball practice when someone did something extremely out of the ordinary, vandalizing the school. And when I did find out it was this student, I was immediately taken aback. And I called his mother, and she volunteered before I even told her about the incident that he had been diagnosed as bipolar. And it made me realize that so many of the things that I saw in my classroom, so many of the things that we see in our classrooms, we can't just label as typical behavior, because a student that is being a typical 7th grader might actually be dealing with something that's much more serious, such as having a bipolar disorder diagnosis.
Generalized anxiety disorder. This is a disorder where the young person is worrying about many things in multiple areas of their life. Now, we all have worries and we all have anxiety, but this is worry that's excessive to the average person's experience of worry. So, for example, you could have a student who is an A student or a B student, who often does very well and appears to be doing very well, but who internally really feels that they're constantly worrying that they're going to fail, that they're not going to get it right. These are often young people who are perfectionistic. They're often doing well in multiple areas of their life. They may be the captain of this particular sports team. They may seem like they have lots of friends, but inside they're constantly very hard on themselves and feeling like they're not doing a good enough job.
Everyone thinks that I'm so perfect and that it all comes easy for me, but it doesn't. I worry about everything. I worry about school stuff. I worry about tests. I worry about games. It really does get me down.
So when you have a student who is worried in multiple areas of their lives, and this worry seems to be continuous and getting in their way of fully enjoying all the things that they're involved in, other symptoms that are related to this and help make this diagnosis are a series of physical symptoms. And they can have, from anywhere from 1 to 3 of these symptoms. They may be experiencing difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, or waking up earlier than they need to be. They may also feel very tired during the day. They may also feel that they're having trouble concentrating, and then also have a feeling of feeling tense all the time. So another illness that can put a teenager at risk for suicide is drug and alcohol abuse. One of the things that can happen is when a young person is suffering from many of the disorders that I've already discussed, is that they may actually utilize alcohol or drugs to help cope with the symptoms that they're experiencing. So a young person who's anxious and feels very uncomfortable in social situations may actually use alcohol to help relax themselves and try to cope with what's going on with them. A depressed teenager might think, geez, if I just smoked a little marijuana, maybe they'll feel a little bit better, even though we know that all these type of coping strategies are not going to work.
That sounds like a good idea.
Alcohol and drug dependence can actually lead a teenager to have decreased control over their thinking and their behaviors and actions, and they actually end up, unfortunately, making a poor decision, or in that moment of feeling so awful, actually making a suicide attempt. Another disorder that put teenagers at risk for suicide is conduct disorder. Teenagers who have this disorder are often neglected and very hard to reach. These are young people who may be involved with stealing, with getting into fights with their peers, with lying, with running away from home, not attending school. They can be physically aggressive and they can be sexually aggressive. They can often be considered the classroom bully. They use intimidation when they interact with other people. It can be very defiant and oppositional and can be very difficult to manage in the classroom.
You know, you find a lot in just the tone, their speaking tone. Being always, and not so much being disrespectful, cursing at a teacher, but just the way they interact with each other and then they interact with you as an authority figure. You know, you can see very early on the signs of a student that starts to shift before it gets to the point that they're really, you know, in the abyss and they're trying to claw their way out. Because I really think that they want someone to see that and just sit down and, as I said before, listen. Okay, what's up? I will validate anything you're saying because I was a kid too, so I know that it hurts.
When a young person starts thinking that life's not worth living, they're better off dead than alive, they may actually make a suicide attempt. So young people are at an increased risk for suicide once they've had a suicide attempt in their life. They're also at increased risk if there's a family history of there being a suicide attempt or a completed suicide. There are situational factors that can heighten a teenager's risk for suicide, such as if there's a divorce in the family, a breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, sexual or physical abuse at home, a very critical family situation, if there's a death of a loved one that was very close to the student, bullying, and that can be face-to-face bullying or bullying that's experienced through the internet.
And those girls sent my email to everyone in school. Everyone knew about it. I started getting emails from everyone in school saying, "Did you really think Alex would like you?" I don't think I believed it.
Another group that may be at heightened risk is gay and lesbian teens, as well as those that are questioning their sexuality. Certain environmental factors can contribute to issues with suicide, such as if there are firearms in the home. When a suicide does occur in one particular community, there can be what we call a contagion effect, whereby this occurring in one community can actually affect another troubled youth to actually consider suicide as an option for themselves. So now that you've learned about some of the risk factors and causes that can lead to suicide, there are some imminent signs that you should be aware of. So that if you have a student who's talking about suicide, who's talking about life's not worth living, who is writing about very sad, gloomy topics, this is a student that you really should reach out and try to help. One symptom that you may not see often is a symptom called psychosis. And that's when a young person may be hearing voices that are not there, seeing things that are not there, and maybe acting in a very bizarre manner. There's another student who really requires urgent intervention, who's also maybe at increased risk for a suicide attempt, and really needs help as soon as possible.
What I try to do is to get them open to talk about it, because I know when something's wrong. I might bring it to the attention of my principal, and maybe we need to get the parent in to see if we all could, sit at the table and help. A word to the wise for all educators and teachers is be more hands-on with the kids.
Our teachers are really on the front lines here. For the most part, they see more of our children than we do. And they certainly see them in a dimension that we don't. Oftentimes, particularly if you have a child who's depressed, that kid comes home, goes upstairs, shuts the door, there's minimal interaction at dinner, whenever you can manage to get them out, you get very little exchange. And as I say, trying to discern what is, normal and what is aberrant behavior is very difficult. So our teachers are likely to be able to see, before we do oftentimes, an indicator of hopelessness. And that's really what we're looking for.
Well, one thing that I would like to advise teachers and anyone that's working with young people is not to necessarily worry about, am I getting the right number of symptoms? Has it been lasting for the long, do I have the time period correct? I just think if it's enough that you're thinking about it and you're noticing a combination of symptoms that really seem to be getting in the way of this young person's life, really think about getting that young person help, whether it is to seek out the guidance counselor, if you know the parents and you feel comfortable, bringing it to the parents' attention. I would say have a low threshold in reaching out to that teenager and asking them, are you okay? Do you think anything's changed for you? Do you need any help with anything? And that could really make a big difference for that teenager.
One of the last ladies that talked about, talked about, her student or her child coming home, going upstairs, going in the room, and maybe possibly coming out for dinner. I mean, I have a teenage boy, so him. I mean, I wouldn't, you guys, he went through here, you guys saw him way more than I ever did, and I still don't see him. So, I think that's just so helpful for us to realize that we do see the kids probably more than the parents do. And I think that's important. So, like she said, you don't have to track every behavior every time, worry about the timeline, all of that. If you're seeing stuff that is unusual for that student, please let us know, parents know, someone know. I think that's important. So, and then we just kind of wanted to open it up for discussion. What are you guys seeing? Obviously, you had a rough 2 weeks, so, and we're here to support you too. So, if you had the student in your classroom last year, you knew Garrett very well, and you're struggling with that, please come talk to us. We're here for you guys as well. Okay. So,
what's it been like in the classroom this first couple weeks?
Well, I've had all kinds of snot on this shoulder, and I've had kids come in during my lunch, and I've had kids come in during my prep, and I've made my room open. I've given my cell phone number out. I've just tried to not just wear a teacher hat, but I've tried to wear a mom hat. And I've seen I've seen good response. Now, everybody can't do that. I'm weird, I know. I'm different. But everybody can't fill those shoes. And so I go home and I am exhausted mentally from these kids coming and talking to me and stuff. And you can't explain that to a husband. You know, well, what are you tired for? You just teach. But I have probably been more on edge and more, not that I'm going to do anything, but tired just because of, you know what I mean? Because of the kids needing more of me than normal. So, and I ask her, when a student comes and talks to a teacher, by law, are we, we're okay to put on that mom hat? And, you know, like, I'm not supposed to call down and say, oh my gosh, you know, I need somebody up here now. I mean, I'm okay to talk to that student and calm them down and talk with them. And then she did mention that I should just check with the guidance counselor so there'd be an extra set of eyes for students, so.
One thing that, I'm glad you kind of brought that up because it brings up the confidentiality piece of it. On one of those flyers, I'm not sure which color it was, but it talked about do's and don'ts, and one thing we want to make sure of is that you don't promise confidentiality when, if a student opens up to you and says, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, committing suicide, or, you know, I've had these thoughts. You cannot keep that to yourself. You have to let us know, parents know. So that is one thing that even us as counselors break that confidentiality if they're thinking of hurting themselves, or they tell you about a student that they just got a text from that is thinking about hurting themselves. We do have to take action on that. So just make sure that you're not making any promises that you can't.
And we're okay to contact you first, right? Because I know it said there, you know, first contact the parents and let the guidance counselors know.
I mean, if you're very comfortable with the parents, like if you know them or whatever, then that's fine. But yeah, we would be your first.
Because oftentimes you guys have already heard of another history that we're not aware of, so we don't want to like.
Hey, the other avenue too is if, like, so often it seems like these same things happen right at the end of a day, or on a Friday afternoon or something like that. And Larry Perkinson can always be called. Everybody should have his number in their phone. If you can't get a hold of anybody else, a family member or something, you can call him and he'll take that and run with it.
And I know that last year, I think I had a student that was talking about suicide, and we sent a police officer over to do a wellness check. Are we able, if like we hear something or we get a text,
absolutely,
then can we call the police and let them know?
You need to come let us know. Yeah, you can let us know, but like, let's say it is on a Friday evening or whatever,
You need to check with us because there may be something we know.
Yeah.
Like Friday, but like if it's on a weekend, if we get a text, then we need to let you guys know and then let
police.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that different times, that's what had happened. But yeah, if somebody said something here, then I'd let you guys know. But if you're out on the weekend or it's late at night at like midnight or something, because unfortunately my students will do that different times because they're thinking about it. And so contacting the police just so they can go over and do a wellness check to make sure that they are okay. But I think just being more aware of what the kids are doing. I know I've been more aware, more hyper alert about what's going on, and trying to just get them to talk it out instead of holding everything in. Because a lot of kids, they'll just bring it all in and they'll just hold everything in, and then it just explodes and then they can't handle it.
I had a student ask me, because I said, you know, maybe something really good is going to come from what's happened. We're having a lunch and learn. Teachers are having a lunch and learn. She said, can I come? I'm like, well, no, not this time. But I said, but I'll mention that there are students that want something.
Yeah, they do. We met yesterday with eStudent Leadership, and we're there. we're meeting again this coming week to develop how do we respond. One of the issues about responding immediately is the risk of the clusters, like she talked about. The more attention we pay to it, the more attractive it becomes for some students who have issues. And, you know, research says 1 out of 3 kids has issues. 1 out of 3 is a high percentage of kids in this building that have some kind of issue that they're dealing with, and you're seeing them every day. But the kids do want to know, they want to know what to look for, they want to know what they should do. So we're developing that, but it'll be a while. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and there's a week dedicated. It's an International Suicide Prevention Month because suicides are going up all over the world. There's a week dedicated for America, and so hopefully we'll have something to roll out from the kids on that, you know, during that week. Because they do want to know. What can we do? What should we know?
I'll just say, you know, as a teacher, and I'm happy to, you know, if you want any teachers to work on with the students. I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone, but you know, as teachers, we're happy to just keep addressing the issue. And I think there was a mindset many years ago. You know, you don't want to talk about exactly how they died, and you don't want everyone to realize that it was suicide because then of the contagion of it. But I think there is a little bit of a new dynamic with that now with social media. I mean, those kids knew what happened and far more details than I ever want to know before many adults did.
But we can't say it out loud because the parents have not given us permission. Mm-hmm. And we defer to the wishes of the parents. You know, Courtney's parents, they wanted it known. Mm-hmm. Garrett's parents don't want it talked about. So, and we have to respect the parents. You know, we feel a loss, but they've lost their child.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted, I was a licensing advisor over at IUC, and as everybody that is getting ready to renew their licenses know that CPR is required now for everybody. Currently, new teachers are required to also take a suicide prevention recognition training. And as the coordinator for the student teachers, I took that training with my students. And so I highly recommend finding one, because some of the things that they talked about in that course as far as what to say, what not to say, are things that I didn't think about. I didn't know how to respond to certain things. And I would imagine, just like CPR, that it will eventually become required for everybody to take it when they go to renew their license as well. So just something to think about looking into trying to find a course that you can take.
Yeah, I actually took one, I think it was the beginning of last year, maybe the end of the year before, I can't remember. But it was the Jason Foundation. So, and that's where we got a lot of these flyers was, so you can just look at that up online, jasonfoundation.com. So, they have lots of good information on that website. But you can do training through that. It's just online that you watch. So. Well, thank you guys all again for coming. We really appreciate it, and anything that we can do, please let us know. Thank you.